Hello, media entrepreneurs. It's another day of opportunity. I'm James Briner, and this is your News Biz, where we talk about the people creating the journalism of the future. You all know how tough it is to start and run a business, and I hope this podcast can help you. Today, our opportunity is to talk with Paul Gewuerz, who produces podcasts for a number of news organizations and has excellent advice for anyone thinking about starting a podcast for their business or news organization. So why don't you introduce yourself personally and professionally? Tell me a little bit about yourself, however you want to do this.
Yeah, I feel like the table's flipped. I record a lot of podcasts for my own podcast myself, so I'm usually the one asking that question. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Jim. I'm Paul Gewuerz. I'm a podcast producer, at least historically. For the last couple of years, you could say that. I currently run a company called localpod.co. We work with local media publishers, refer to us as a bandwidth partner. We basically enable automated podcasts and vertical video services. That's a new one we've kind of rolled out. We help local media companies launch, grow, and monetize podcasts. And we're kind of leaning into the vertical video space now, too. And it's all based off of people's reporting. Yeah.
So how did you get into podcasting? But before we get into that, the most interesting thing in your background on LinkedIn was you drove a truck for Coors beer for 10 years.
I sure did.
Tell me about that.
Most of my 20s. I came out of school in 2008, which wasn't a great time for career opportunities. And I had some friends working at Coors, and I was like, I could do that. I could drive a truck. That sounds fun. So I went to work there, and it's really fun working for a beer company in your 20s. Yeah, I literally drove a beer truck, delivered beer, and then later I moved into their concessions team. So we were in Denver. So we supplied beer to all the events and concerts and sports teams, Colorado Rockies, Denver Broncos, Red Rocks Amphitheater. People are familiar with that a lot. So we'd load an absurd amount of beer into those places and get them set up for all their activities. It was a fun gig, but throwing 50 kegs around a day wasn't super easy on the body. And so at one point people told me, you have a voice for radio. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I could lean into that. So I got into actually audiobook narrating freelance. I narrated 50 some audiobooks for authors out of home studio. The freelance lifestyle got a little old, feast or famine, either too much work on your plate or not enough. And I listened to a lot of podcasts. So I got into podcasting, looking for the kind of recurring clients. Did that for a few years with influencers, for lack of a better term, was most of my clientele, people with large social followings. A couple of years back, I was contacted by a weekly newspaper in Seattle to create a podcast for them. And I kind of fell in love with the space. I started my podcast a few years ago and kind of exclusively started working with local news and local media publishers since then. And I realized kind of the importance of that industry. But yeah, the beer job, it was fun. I did used to get a lot of free beer, which I don't anymore. That was a tough change after leaving Coors. I have to pay for all my beer now.
Well, you started out in journalism. You studied in Colorado State? Metro State.
It was Metro State College. It's Metro State University in Denver now. Yeah. I was interested in journalism. Mostly, I was a big fan of Hunter Thompson in high school. That's what led me into it. And then I was just always interested in journalism.
So you're still there, and you started a newsletter about a year ago or something. Is that about right?
About a year and a half, I guess. Just finished tomorrow's newsletter this morning, and it's edition 83. So however many weeks, about a year and a half.
So tell me about publishing a newsletter. See, I was very interested in your newsletter.
Local News Industry Pulse.
News Industry Pulse. I read several editions of it, and I could see you're reading everything that's going on in terms of the business models of local news around the country, around the world. I was very impressed. So you obviously have learned a lot about all this, and you're sharing it now in your newsletter. How's that going?
It's going good. I started the newsletter for a few reasons. First of all, to have a way to communicate to my people that I work with or that I work with. And also just, you said, to stay informed on the industry. So it's really a curated briefing of the top stories every week. I do maybe 4 or 5 top stories and quick breakdown. I guess the term I've heard is smart brevity, like the Axios style, a quick breakdown with a link, give you some details on the story I'm linking to, some context and a link out to it. I also promote the podcast, the episodes that came out that week through there in case people want to have a listen to those, to my podcast. But more than anything, it's helped me stay super connected to the industry and what's going on, set business models, industry trends, and the big news, the big things happening week to week. So, yeah.
So the business models of big traditional media, broadcasters, radio broadcasters, television broadcasters, print media, traditional chains of newspapers, national news, and so forth, all those things are struggling. Why do you think that is, and what kinds of solutions do you see?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, as a lot of people listening to this probably know why I think local news industry has suffered over the last couple of decades. A lot of people point at Google and Meta, and they probably have a big part to blame in there. But I also think it's a matter of the internet at large, almost commoditizing information or the ease of publishing. And I think people lost that connection to the local news outlets in a lot of cases. As far as what I think people need to be doing, like I said, I talk to a lot of people that are smarter than me and are boots on the ground on my podcast where I get a lot of my information. I think publishers need to be experimenting, collaborating, and trying new things. There's a lot of great examples of maybe not local media, but media companies, models that can be leaned into. One example I really like is an industry newsletter I read daily called podnews.net, I believe. Are you familiar with that?
Possibly. I mean, I read a lot of the different things.
It's for the podcast industry. And it's this amazing model. It was written about an editor and publisher by my friend Guy Tasaka a while back. It's basically this guy, James Cridland, and he started this newsletter. And I think it's him plus one or two freelancers. Has 30,000 subscribers, and it does $700,000 or $800,000 in annual revenue based on this model, where there's one sponsor per episode. People or companies are only allowed to advertise once quarterly or once per year. They also have a Patreon model at the bottom where individuals or companies can have a little tile that they pay per month for to be just seen visually in there and everything. And one thing that they've done really interesting is they do event listings and job postings for free. And that's like this really cool thing. I think that a lot of local media publishers historically relied on like classified ads as a revenue source and everything. And, there's probably some wishing to get back to that, but Craigslist kind of disrupted that.
Yeah.
But for myself, I find it super valuable. It gets me back and engaged on that newsletter every day because I see events, the webinars are going on, see trends. I see what other companies are hiring for in the job listings. Yeah, that's just one really good model. In terms of local media publishers, other things they should be doing, I think, once again, I'm not a journalist. I wouldn't call myself a journalist, but things I've seen going really well for other people are events. I think the big thing to keep in mind in 2026 is how digital everything has become and how connected to your phones and everyone is. I'm disconnected from the real world. And I've seen a lot of interesting things with local publishers doing actual community building events. My friend Paul Myers in California runs 2 small newsrooms, and they do a brews and news, I think, once a month, where they go down to a local brewery and they give everybody 1 pint of beer. You got to fork over your email address, though, for the news list, and they hook people in that way.
Have you heard of the Gutenberg? What is it? The fact that we're returning to non-print media these days, so that Facebook, video, podcasts, where real people with real faces and real voices are the Gutenberg parenthesis is what it's called. Basically, now we're returning to the more authentic, is the idea, forms of communication among human beings, which is people talk to each other and they're face to face. So video, YouTube is becoming huge. Maybe the biggest media organization, most important media organization in the world, possibly. And podcasting, what do you think about that? The so-called Gutenberg parenthesis return to original forms of human communication, authentic, trustworthy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's why also, in addition to YouTube, also vertical video Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok. I think Facebook also has them.
So vertical video, describe that for our audience.
Yeah, it's TikTok. It's an industry term.
Vertical
I've been using it too
format,
much lately.
correct?
Vertical format. You're swiping on your phone. It's so TikTok or Instagram Reels. It's basically the screen of your phone, and you watch one 10, 20, 30-second clip. You swipe to the next one. You swipe to the next one. It's basically what TikTok came in and disrupted a lot of the social media platforms. Now they're all trying to play catch up with them, is what it is. But you get to trust people and know people. Same with podcasts. I listen to a number of podcasts, and I've never met the hosts face to face, but I feel like I have a relationship with them. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
I think that's what all publishers, local and all publishers, need to really be thinking about, is how to form a human connection, even if it is maybe digitally like that. And I think podcasts are the hardest audience to grow, but they're by far the most engaged if you can get that audience built, because of the trust and the humanity, I guess, like for a better term, the connection.
Why is it hard to grow podcast audiences?
Oh, yeah. If anybody could solve that problem, they would be a billionaire. I'll tell you that. For one thing, it's an open, like email, it's an open ecosystem. It's distributed via RSS. So I put out my podcast. It goes to the top discovery channels are Apple Podcasts, and then second is Spotify. And then there's about 100 other apps. You can go from there. So whereas if you go on YouTube and you put a video up, everything is in the YouTube ecosystem. It's all driven via their algorithm. With a podcast, you're kind of signing up for like an email directly. It's much harder the discoverability is a lot harder. The main way people find podcasts is through other podcasts that they listen to, recommendations or ads they hear there. Right. So it's just not like YouTube. If you can hit all the viral trends or something really hits the mark, it'll go to 10 million, 100, unlimited amount of people. Whereas podcasts, there's not that engine. Apple Podcasts is great. Spotify is great. Actually, I'm not a huge fan of either of them, but they have their own ecosystems that they like to control. It's just harder to find a podcast. The other thing with podcasts, why they're so hard to grow, is there's limited shelf space for a consumer. I can subscribe to 15 newsletters and browse through them in a day. How many 45-minute conversations can I listen to on the regular? It's hard. It's harder to get onto that kind of rotation of regular listening. But once again, that's why it's so valuable if you can crack through.
Well, from a marketing perspective, a newsletter is a good way to try to expand that audience.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because then you are distributed more widely, and to the extent that you're following news about the podcasts and local news podcasts, that can help. So from your perspective, if you were going to advise somebody in a local news market, say, who knows, 1 million population down to 250,000 population, what would you recommend in terms of a podcast, the length of the podcast, content, just off the top of your head? What would be some of the main things you would emphasize for somebody who's thinking about a podcast?
Yeah, I'll tell you what a lot of publishers I talk to want to do or have an idea of, and what I recommend, what we do in Local Pod. A lot of publishers come in because they're podcast listeners and see examples of these interview-based podcasts. Take the gold standard, the Joe Rogan Experience, where somebody sits down and talks for a long time. There's also another huge genre is true crime or investigative reporting, where it's 5-6 part miniseries on some local controversy or crime or something like that. A lot of folks want to jump right into that. The problem is, like I was talking about before, it's hard to build that audience. What you need to do, if I was giving advice to somebody starting one, is build a habit. Habit. Just like newsletters and podcasts, audiences are very similar. You have to build the habit, know what day it comes out, when it comes out. And so my recommendation for a local news publisher, what I tell almost everybody I talk to, is to maybe start with twice a week. I call it a news blast. The weather, 1 or 2 top stories, events going on that week. Keep it under 8 minutes, real quick. Just a quick rundown. That's it. Do it every very predictable cadence. Tuesday and Fridays at 7 a.m., whatever the case may be. You can pre-schedule it, pre-record it and everything. But do that and consistently promote it through email. If you have a solid email list, that's the top channel. Like you said, you had that podcast before. Things that people don't realize is it's incredibly time consuming to keep up audio or video for that matter.
Yeah.
The production schedule. That's why I say just start with a quick habit building thing. Everything you're going to get your news. That's the unique edge that local news has is it's automatically engaging to people that live in a geographic area. I automatically want to know why Main Street's closed in my town or what city council voted on or what's going on that I can take my kids to this weekend. So just give them that. And do it every day, at least twice a week. I have some large, say a market of 1 million people. That could be daily. It could be up to 5, 6, 7 times a week. Keep doing that. Grow that audience. And from there, you can fold in the other kind of the different parts I was talking about at the beginning, like the investigative piece, the interview with the mayor, everything. That can all go out in the same RSS feed. But you have people hooked in on that habit of a quick, repeatable, habit-forming podcast with local news and information. That's the gold standard. And it doesn't take that much. The CPMs, talking from a revenue standpoint, even if you get to 1,000 downloads per episode, the industry standard is 1,000 downloads over the first 30 days an episode is released. But if you hit that 1,000 number, you can start monetizing it pretty well.
For somebody who's just starting out, what kinds of technical stuff do they need? What would you recommend that they absolutely buy or use to create a podcast?
If you have a decent modern laptop or computer, I would not even start with a microphone. Another thing that's happened recently is there's AI tools that have gotten so good. One platform I would highly recommend to anybody doing a podcast is riverside.fm.
Yes.
It's a platform for recording podcasts. So you can have people on like you and I right here, or you can hop on there solo. It records video and audio. The amazing thing is in the post-production suite, you can edit it. You don't need any audio editing skills. You can edit it via transcript, just highlight, delete, cut this section, whatever. It's really intuitive. But they also have a bunch of AI tools, one of which is called Magic Audio. And you literally just click this Magic Audio button. It does, I'm not even sure everything it does, but it does a bunch of compression and noise minimization and everything on the audio tracks. I have my fancy audiobook microphone that I use for most of my podcasts, and I'll have people hop on an iPhone in their car. I've literally recorded people on my podcast doing that. And you just click the Magic Audio. It does so much of the work I used to have to do even 3 years ago. And it'll give you super crisp, clean audio. I would not worry too much about fancy tools, microphones. Riverside.fm is one I would absolutely recommend. I think for the premium one, it's $30 a month, something like that, which is a no-brainer, especially if it's a business or a publisher like that. But yeah, down the line, you can always invest in fancy microphones and fancy studios, lighting, rigs, all that stuff. But yeah, no, a laptop, Riverside.fm, and a podcast host, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said for the authenticity that comes from having not a fancy studio, not fancy lighting, not all kinds of stuff. In the podcasting world, that kind of lack of technology can come across as more authentic.
Yeah, like I said, just the kind of Riverside suite I was just talking about, that's going to be, all you want to do is not have terrible audio. That's the number one thing. If it's really echoey or you can't, or scratchy, you can't hear somebody, that's going to turn people off. As long as it's just decent. It's hard to tell the difference between me using my laptop microphone right now, going the way we're recording right now, versus all the New York Times podcasts and Joe Rogan and all that. It's not super noticeable, the difference.
I totally agree.
So, yeah, people are engaged. Like you said, they're listening to us. It's like they're in our conversation right now. Somebody's going to be listening to this and just kind of soaking it in. That's, yeah. So I think the big thing to keep in mind in 2026 is how digital everything has become and how connected to your phones that everyone is. I'm disconnected from the real world. And I've seen a lot of interesting things with local publishers doing actual community building events. My friend Paul Myers in California runs 2 small newsrooms, and they do a brews and news, I think once a month, where they go down to a local brewery and they give everybody 1 pint of beer. You got to fork over your email address though.
I'm curious also, how do you think AI is affecting your business, business of podcasting, business of local news?
I would probably consider myself a techno optimist. I don't think AI is going to take some jobs. It's not going to take everybody's job. So the line you always hear is somebody that knows how to use AI is going to take your job. And so talking to folks on my podcast, this term I've been thinking about a lot recently, and it's kind of what we do at my company also, is the AI sandwich, is how it's actually being used. And by AI sandwich, I mean the person or the organization, the people in the organization is the bread, the AI is the meat in the middle. So there's somebody at the top putting in the information, what it wants done. AI is doing a lot of the manual stuff that used to take forever. And then a human is fact checking, make sure it's not insane or completely wrong on the bottom end. I see it increasing a lot of efficiencies on the back end. I know a lot of newsrooms are using it to record and take transcription for public meetings, stuff like that. It's great for suggesting headlines. I wouldn't use it for writing material by itself, but it's great for stuff like that. And, I use AI a lot in my companies. One of the barriers to getting into podcasting is the amount of time it takes to record and edit audio for the News Blast style podcast we do.
Yeah.
So I've got several folks doing it where it's an AI narrated podcast. And it sounds strange. It's fully, the voices are really human sounding. We acknowledge that it's AI in the beginning. What I found is with local news and information, people are not that upset about it because it's not like you and I having a conversation where that's faked with AI. It's like, I want to hear when they're going to open that road. I want to hear, we just want the information. It's a means of conveying information. Yeah. So, we'll do AI narrated podcasts and bring down the cost for people getting into it and everything. That being said, for local publishers and all publishers, AI slop is becoming a big issue. Just this junk that people are throwing up all over the place.
Yes.
Unreadable, just terrible stuff going out there. I know that AI overviews, like from Google, are stealing a ton of traffic from news publishers. So that's not great. I don't know how we solve that. It goes back to forming that connection in person and direct relationship with your audience via newsletters, on digital media, what have you. So really, it's a mixed bag. I use it for literally creating some of our podcasts for clients. And, there's a lot of, it's kind of like saying, what are your thoughts on electricity? It's like electricity is going to do a lot of stuff. So people are going to get fried and, we're going to bring hospitals to the third world too, it's just mixed bag.
So as I have mentioned, I advise small business clients on their businesses. I'm trying to help them get from point A, where they're just doing a startup, or maybe helping them advance. And because of my background, I get presented as a digital marketing expert, which I feel very uncomfortable with, to be honest. And especially now, because of those things that are happening, because the results of Google and Facebook and all kinds of other things are going down, people getting assigned more clients who are saying, I'm not getting any results. What should I do? What I'm advising them, I'm interested in your reaction to this, is I'm saying, try not to think about getting customers digitally by having them come to you. Go back to your contacts. Every contact you have, family, friends, previous business partners, friends of friends, anybody who, it's real people with real relationships, with real businesses, and that kind of, basically I say, get real and go back to the basics of marketing, which is person to person. People talk to each other, people exchange information. What do you think about that? And what would you advise in relation to that?
Excuse me. I couldn't agree more. People work with people that they know, like, and trust. That's just human nature. I'll say I have a footprint on LinkedIn, on my newsletter, on my podcast. Probably 90% of my clients for my business are either a referral from somebody I've already worked with or somebody I've already had, I know, in a context like this or something. They know me, they like me, they trust me. That's 100% the name of the game.
The Substack newsletter I have started out maybe 3 years ago with 300 names of people that I knew from working here and there. Mm-hmm. And now it's up to 1,500. but I don't feel, and those come in through the Substack's algorithm. So even if they're getting that newsletter, I'm not sure how connected they are because I don't believe the metrics that I see about open rates because I think they can be gamed by all kinds of stuff. At any rate, what's your feeling about email newsletters in general?
I have the same worries about open rates, not even just in Substack. I use Beehive for mine. And so I have pretty high open rates, close to 60% open rates for most of my newsletters. But if you look at the time that I publish them, I send it out at 4 a.m. I'm in Mountain Time. So that's 6 a.m. on the East Coast. I send it out at 4 a.m. every Thursday. And if you look at a chart, there's a gigantic spike of like 80% of the opens are literally at 4 a.m. I'm like, Are there really that many people waiting right then to open it? Or are these, or Apple or Google inboxes scanning these and showing false rates?
That's what happens, I think, is that some of these things open automatically. There are some email apps, I think Google Gmail apps, it opens some of these things automatically. And I would be surprised if out of 1,500, 10% are actually opening it and reading it.
Yeah.
But that's 100, for me, that's 150 people. And that's 150 more than I would be getting from search engine optimization, which gives me nothing on my website.
Yeah, that's going away more.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel bad. I know they need to be. What's the new one?
Answer engine optimization.
Yeah, something like that.
And actually, that's not bad advice. What's new revenue source for local news in Cleveland? Here's 5 examples. Blah blah blah. That comes across as a trick to get you to click.
I also think when you were saying there are maybe 100 people opening that out of 1,500. I think a lot of people with podcasts and newsletters in particular, those two, they get frustrated and they give up because they only have a few hundred listeners, subscribers, or whatever. The trick I've told clients before, especially B2B context or something, is you only have maybe 50 people actually reading your email. I was like, imagine yourself in a classroom with 50 people.
Exactly.
Like that is a lot of people listening to you still. So that's what you need to be leaning into on the business front. And that goes for publishers too. I don't trust many of the metrics these days anymore on open rates or Google or any of that.
That goes back to Dr. Augustine Fu.
He came on my podcast too. There's some shocking stuff. Makes you maybe not want to believe all the metrics that are being fed to you from a lot of these players. So
I find him reliable.
Yes. It's crazy. If what he's saying is true, it's just shocking. It's a big short moment for the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Usually the best comments come as you're a reporter, you close the notebook and you're walking out the door. That's when you get the best quote.
I know. A lot of times it's after I stop hitting record on my podcast. But I don't know. I love talking about all this stuff. Shameless self-promotion. Go listen to my podcast, Small Press, Big Ideas. Or, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Paul Gewuerz. I guarantee it's the only Paul Gewuerz with this spelling, Gewuerz, because I'm the only one. And I love just talking about this stuff with people. If anybody wants to share thoughts on anything we've talked about, but lean into newsletters, lean into podcasts. Don't overcomplicate things. Just forge those direct relationships. Yep, that's about all I got. I feel like I repeat myself all the time on my podcast and this one, but that's what people need to be doing. Business, publishers, everything. That's all for me.
All right, Paul. Listen, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Jim. And I look forward to I'll cross-promote this as well when it comes out. But this is good. Let's stay in touch.
Yep. Bye now. If you liked this episode, please share it. And if you have suggestions for topics you'd like me to cover or people you'd like me to interview, just email me at jamesbriner@gmail.com. I'll include the address in the show notes, along with links to other organizations we mentioned. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And remember, it's another day of opportunity.